Não, não. Bom, boa tarde a todos. Bem-vindos a mais um webinar da Bliss. A Bliss, que é a Associação Brasileira da Indústria Linguística. Quero agradecer a todo mundo por estar aqui presente, agradecer a presença do Istvan também. A Associação, né, Brasileira da Indústria Linguística a associação que foi fundada em 2020 com o propósito de criar uma representatividade das empresas, né, de serviços linguísticos no Brasil. Um dos nossos principais programas são os webinars mensais, como esse. E se você ainda não é membro da associação, por favor, entre em contato, que nós temos muito mais para trazer e muito mais para oferecer. Bom, eu não vou tomar muito tempo, a estrela do dia aqui é o Svan. Eu só queria falar também, por favor, deixem comentários, escrevam-nos na seção do chat, para deixar esse webinar aqui o mais participativo possível, tá bem? Now, I'll pass the floor and the microphone to Svan. Thank you very much, Svan, again, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, and hola, boa tarde, to all of you. Thank you very much for joining today. So, as Paulo had said, like it would be great if you participated, and I would love to hear, like, why you came to this webinar and what are the topics related to automation that interest you. So, if anybody wants to come forward and just explain that to me, that would be great. Uh, because then maybe in the presentation, which I made relatively generic, I could help you with like some suggestions in this direction.
Yeah,
I don't know if you can speak or not, but
yeah.
don't
Probably
be shy. I
if
think it's best if
someone
you just.
if someone can speak wants to speak, probably should write a bit because I can't allow to speak if someone wants.
Okay,
Yeah.
no worries. If anything comes to your mind afterwards, then please come forward. I'm just wondering if you are able to see my screen, if everything is visible and
Yeah,
going fine.
there is only the blocking part there. Yeah, this one.
Okay, on the top,
Yeah,
right?
now it's clear.
Okay, no, I can't help with that. All right, great. So today we are going to talk about automation without breaking the bank. So what I was thinking about is like how to start automation on a shoestring. And this is not going to be a Be Lazy presentation, but I will also make some explanations about what we do at Be Lazy. What I rather wanted is share a little bit like if you want to automate, like how to start with the mindset, what are the things that are the typical challenges that translation companies meet, uh, what to know about clients and how to make sure that this is becoming a relevant thing, how to measure the success of it, and what are some easy hacks that you can go ahead with without really thinking much. And before we go into anything really, thank you very much, Juliana. Uh, Yeah. Before we go into anything really complex, I just want to explain to you like how hard, how many decisions somebody takes, even for a simple problem like finding the correct vendor for a translation task. I mean, what you're saying is like, how do you do that? Like you list the vendors available and you pick the right one. But let's have a look at how many problems this is raising. I mean, first of all, the question is, do we have a database of vendors? There are companies that don't have a database of vendors and they are just knowing who to outsource to. And if we do have, how reliable is it? Um, Are you sure that everything in it is correct or not? The second question is, do we have a business management system that can automatically offer projects? So do we have technology for this? Or a translation management system that can automatically offer projects? Because sometimes it's not only the business management system like a Protemos or a Plunet or an XTRF, but rather the translation management system, a MemoQ or a Phrase that is automatically offering the projects to the vendors. Or do you have a Google Sheet where the vendors are seeing what is assigned to them? This is something that I've seen quite a few companies use in the past, because you can have your own Google Sheet and you can share a view of that with the vendors, so they only see what is relevant for them. Or some enterprises use, for example, Trello boards or Jira, where you can offer projects. So how do the translators receive the projects? Then the other question is, do we need an acceptance confirmation from the vendor? Or do you have an agreement that every day you can give them this amount of work because you are working with them all the time? This is already changing the game. Because if you need confirmation, then obviously that is an extra process in it. If you have an agreement with them, and what they can tell you is that today I'm not working, so don't send me anything. So the onus is on their end. That's a whole different problem. Then how do I decide whether I look for freelancers or look for an LSP? There are some companies that say that they work with LSPs if, for example, for certain languages, and they outsource the freelancers in their main languages. Then the next question is whether finding the vendors is an urgent task or it can wait. I mean, if you got a translation job that is due in 2 weeks and it's 5,000 words, you can spend a couple of days until you find a vendor. And of course, a vendor is available at any certain point in time for a certain capacity. I mean, if I have 5,000 words capacity today until the end of the week, in 2 days, it's not for sure that I will have, for example, the proportional, because some others can come in. So may I be able to schedule something later? Maybe yes, maybe not. It depends on the deadline and the amount of work. Does it matter how much effort you put into finding a translator? If you got a really, really good and very profitable job, then of course you can write many emails, you can thank for the answers, and so on and so forth. If you are very, very low on margins, which these days many companies are, then you don't really have the time to really treat finding a translator very nicely. I mean, also if you are getting a job that is 10,000 words and trying to find a translator for that, you handle that differently than a job that is 15 words. And the last consideration, which is also important, is that if the company that you are working for, let's say it's a direct client, requested a quote from you, how likely are they to accept it and to accept it on time? Because obviously, if you're not sure they will accept it, then you just send a quote. You are not really finding a vendor yet, or you're not sure. We will solve that later. If you are sure that they are going to accept the quote, then you put work into finding the vendor. If you are also sure that they are going to accept the quote today, then you can actually start the project, even if there is quoting. So how do I measure the success of my selection? So these were just the criteria or the kind of the considerations that influence the process of finding a vendor. And this is why automation can be very complex, simply because you have to think this through and understand like what are the things that you are going to really do and what are the things that you are not going to do. So the first aspect is like cost. There are two things. The vendor has a cost, but also finding the vendor has a cost, because you can do a database search for candidates. This is easy if you've got a good database, but you need to update that database all the time. You need to contact the candidates. You need to manage the contact process. This is easy if you are using, for example, a business management system. Check if there is a follow-up needed if nobody took it. Like, for example, you offered the job through a system to 3 vendors and nobody took it in, I don't know, 4 hours. Then the project manager needs to come in and follow up on that. Then ensuring that the vendor is following all the briefing and has the skills. So, for example, you are starting to work with a new vendor, then obviously you are giving them instructions and they need to be good. And with a new vendor, you probably do more work than with an existing one. You need to support the vendor with the technology aspects. Uh, so all these are like on the PM side, the cost aspects, but there is also another one, which is the vendor's cost, really. Then the time is like how quickly you found the right vendor. Can the vendor meet the deadline? Is it realistic? Is there buffer time for emergencies? One of the issues that we see is sometimes project managers are busy, so they are not really quick in assigning projects. And then in the end, the vendor doesn't have enough time to really deliver that correctly. I don't know if that happened to you. Then the quality aspect is also important because after all, the product of your translation is going to be a quality and the vendor plays a very important role in it. Uh, is it going to be in line with the client expectations? Does the vendor already have experience with this client? Do you need to train them? And is there a quality risk involving a new vendor? For example, there are some translators that do not read the instructions, and they may be excellent translators otherwise, but maybe there is a quality risk this way. So, what are the solutions here? I mean, you can take an ad hoc vendor selection for projects. What's the issue? If you are about to, like, reach out, contact new vendors for 15 Word projects, that's very expensive. Um, so what you can do if it's very expensive is that you can bundle the projects as the daily or weekly bundles, and then that way uh, work with new vendors because that way you can scale the capacities later, help the company move forward. However, sometimes vendors have minimum fees. And that is something you need to also address. So it's a very complex thing, which seems like a very simple thing. Then you can also do a project client teams, checking on a per project basis maybe, but maybe this can be automated, and we will look at some options here. Or the issue here is that if you got like a client team, then how will you involve new vendors at times? How will you dilute the teams? And then the last bit is like when you're working on a contract basis, is like you've got a specific main vendor or a couple of main vendors that reserve for you daily capacity. Then you don't have all this problem of like finding. If it's an ongoing project, this is always a very good idea. You don't have to discuss the capacity with them. They already expect that you are going to sell work, but this only works for ongoing projects. So the thing is that this is very simple, very cheap, but at the same time, if you're not able to give them like repetitive work, then they are not able to really commit to you. So what else? Have you ever thought about the payment scheme? So for example, if you are getting a minimum fee from the translator, are you able to charge a minimum fee to the customer? If you are getting, for example, 30% paid for the 100% matches, are you going to be able to pay 30% also for the 100% matches to the vendor? Like the payment scheme being identical is an important consideration because you can lose money on this. And then how do you evaluate the vendor? Um, the question is that are we always like, outsourcing to the best person from a business perspective? How do we evaluate their quality? Probably there is some metrics for you, which can be like, just 1 to 5. This was a good translation. This was a bad translation. How do you evaluate their performance on time? Which is obviously, uh, you need to evaluate from the moment that the vendor got the job to the moment they delivered, if they delivered on time, if there was buffer. And then how do you take into account if they are doing the extra mile for you? Like some translators are very strict with their time. Others would tell you like, okay, now you are in trouble. I'm going to help you out. I mean, obviously, the one that is going to help you out is somebody that is your ally in the business. The other one is your vendor. And you also need to make sure that you keep a good relationship with those that are ready to take the extra mile with you. So far we haven't talked about any uh, automation. But what I wanted to explain to you with this example here is the power of the detailed agreements and the processes. So if you are able to find out for which client you have which strategy of vendor assignment, and then you are able to have the agreements within the company, so nobody really needs to find out like how to source a vendor there, and also with the vendors, then what you will see is that if you got all these agreements and processes done, then the cost of the vendor assignment will go down very significantly. But the cost of the process agreement will go up. And you always have to find the middle ground here. And why is the cost of the vendor assignment going down? Because if you know how you are assigning a vendor, you can automate it. There is technology for this. So what do you need to define? What vendor selection strategy do I match with which type of projects? What specifics of a project influence my strategy? The client, the end client. I mean, probably there are some of you who are working for other translation companies like large multilingual vendors. And there you may have like, I don't know, Google as an end client. And no matter if it is coming from one company or another, maybe that is the one that defines your vendor selection. The repetitiveness, the foreseeability of the capacity allocation, the deadline of a project. Like with some customers, for example, you're able to influence the deadline. With others, no. The acceptance likelihood, which we talked about, like if you need to give a quote, if the customer is going to accept a quote 99% of the time, then you are obviously having a vendor selection strategy that is specific to them. But if it's 50%, then maybe it's a different vendor selection, or maybe it's a two-tier vendor selection that you have somebody in mind, but you don't really double check everything until they accept the project. So for each category, what is the vendor selection process? You may have different processes for different types of clients and clients' repetitiveness of work and so on and so forth. And one thing that's probably very important is that if you don't have to think about like, how am I going to select the vendor? Now that's the moment when you can start automating. And this is the reason why I gave you this very, very long explanation about a topic that is probably not your main concern at the moment. But we see that a lot of the time in automation is going into like in automated projects, the part that is least automated at the moment, what we see is that it's vendor assignment. And the reason for that is that you need to make very specific decisions in order to be able to automate that. Can you automate that? Absolutely. I've seen companies that don't even contact vendors unless there is like a special case. You can do that, but it is something that requires a lot of thinking. So there is always the topic of innovation and automation. And a lot of people put an equation mark between the two, but in reality, they are different because innovation is rethinking how you work. It is like zooming in, understanding the details, and then zoom out, understand the impact. Usually, only people who have like the full picture are able to do innovation. And if you want innovation to be present in your organization, then make sure that the person who is responsible for this sees everything from the most minuscule thing to the most important details relating to profitability, relating to finances, everything. With innovation, you don't only define the processes, but you also define their applicability. What are these processes applying to and what are they not applying to? Very important. You also need to define the migration path because you may have like some big idea, but it's not something that you can implement from tomorrow onwards for all the projects. So where do you stay with the existing things? How long do you stay with the existing things? How do you address, for example, resistance and so on and so forth? Uh, If you are changing the big picture, which is something that you might do, I mean, when you're, for example, implementing large language models, do a simulation, even if it takes time. Spend the time on that because otherwise you may just have forgotten about something. And this is what a lot of companies uh, do that, they want to implement immediately something in production before investing into trying it out. Just like we don't release software that has not been tested, a company cannot innovate without testing it. But innovation is what makes you unique. And what is automation? Automation already requires the detailed process. So the point is that automation comes after innovation always. But you can automate something that already exists with you. If you've got a process on your end, the innovation may be that you are just doing it faster. And then, like, what you need is the detailed process. Because the thing is that with automation, the questions that always come when you start running on that are small questions. So therefore, always concentrate on one process at a time. You cannot automate everything at once. Just consider like how do you split up your work and what are you going to automate? Because the thing is that it requires learning. Automation is a mindset, and it's a different mindset from innovation. The point is that while in innovation you can be the big thinker and it's like very C-level stuff, in automation you need to be super process oriented, super detail oriented, and you need to learn to care about the details because those are the things that actually make or break the whole story. And ambiguity is the enemy of automation. If you are not able to decide how you do one thing, you are not able to automate it. You have to decide on that. So decision making is a very important part of this. What you need is like for everything you do, what's the clear input? What information do I need to have a full solution to it? What's the output? What do I get out of it? And what are the steps in between? So, for example, in the vendor automation story, and what you will need to do is like, how are you matching the different vendor allocation strategies to the different customers and so on and so forth. And basically, what are the steps that you perform if the scenario is like this, or if the scenario is like that? Meaning that, for example, we have an ad hoc job that we only do once in a year, or we have a job that we get daily bundles for. Very different story. Automation always is a trigger, something comes in. A condition is like if this thing that came in complies with this or that condition, and an action, we do this. So the first automation platform was called, not the first, but like one of the early ones, IFTTT. If this, then that. That's the name of the platform. And that is explaining automation. And automation doesn't make you unique. It just makes you scalable or more profitable. And you can sell innovation without automation. One of the types of innovations is automation, but automation is about scalability. In our industry, there are three types of automation. One is what we call the process automation within a system. So there are systems that, for example, do the vendor allocation for you. There are systems that, for example, do have automated actions. But then there is also like the part which is a transaction automation, which is between systems. Let's say you want to use ChatGPT in your translation tool. That is between systems. That's not a process automation. The system may provide that, but you can also use a different system in order to match the two together. And then finally, the linguistic automation, which is very different from the project management automation. Because with the linguistic automation, the automation aspect is easier. Let's say you got machine translation. I mean, what do you need for machine translation? You need an XLIF, something that you are translating. You need a target language and the source language combination, and you need an engine that you are going to use. When it gets to large language models, it becomes a little bit more complicated because large language models fit into the process at several steps. So you can do like machine translation quality estimation, which comes after machine translation. You can do automated post-editing, which comes also after machine translation, but it may be coming even after human translation. So you need to decide where you stick it into the process. You can have, for example, automated quality gates, which are coming after the human translation for sure. So in this case, you need to say, like, I have these statuses very clearly without any ambiguity, and this is where I'm putting it in. And what do we need? For example, for machine translation quality estimation, we need good prompts. Uh, for automated post-editing, you might need the style guide in the prompt. So let's have a look at why automation efforts often fail. And here I have put some capital sins uh, that I've seen companies do wrong. And these are things that very often depend on the company's leadership or owner. So the first one is that we always want to go for the big problems. I mean, when you are starting to learn a language, it's not the conditional subjunctive that you are starting to use. It's the present tense. So don't think about solving the biggest problem in the company for automation without practicing. People train to run the marathon. Don't think that you are able to just pick a piece of technology and it's going to solve all your problems immediately. Technology providers can help you with training, but it is something that what you need for automation to work is a very, very specific understanding of the processes, very explicit, which humans don't often need. And yes, there is AI. But the point is that even humans make mistakes without specification of the problem. The second issue that we see is that companies give like the work of automation to, for example, project manager, but don't allow any failure. I mean, a project manager used to do 100 projects in a month, and the requirement was to have like 100% on-time delivery. And now all of a sudden, do these 100 projects and also start automation. First of all, when you start automation, there is a risk of something going wrong. This can be mitigated, but the risk is there. And if the requirement is to have exactly the same amount of work going through with the same amount of reliability, I mean, where do you fit into your daily work? The learning, the experimentation part. You cannot. Uh, what you can do is say to one person, for example, that you are responsible for the experimentation, and I'm dedicating this other person to help you in case there is an issue. Or you are talking with the customer and say that, like, right now we are experimenting to be better, but maybe sometimes we will be a little late or there will be some issues. Please give us feedback and we will be able to improve based on that. Some customers accept this, others don't. So the point is that have somebody help this person, because doing this alone is very hard. What you can do with customers is you can use an SLA. So the point is that this is a very rare thing because SLAs talk about price, talk about delivery time, but they don't talk about successful delivery time, on-time delivery requirements. And in reality, if you look at the Six Sigma, for example, which is a production-based quality assurance tool, even they have like an SLA. They don't say that they are 100% precise. If you implement that kind of a thing, you are 99.9975, whatever. In reality, there is no translation company that is 100% precise with their deliveries, period. But people have a psychological way of, looking back at the things that they were good at and forgetting about the things where they failed. So it's not going to change the way you work. It's just going to make it more explicit. The third thing is not defining success. Uh, so the expectations need to be set because it's not going to be like, overnight, you will not need any project manager any longer. You will not need any translator any longer. This is going to be a longer term thing. And nothing solves 100% of any problem. It can solve 99%. We've seen companies where this was reached. But for that 1%, there needs to be a person there. And the interesting part is that if you don't define like what's your expectation very clearly, then you may say that like, so I managed to automate 80% of the vendor assignment processes. I mean, that is a success that needs to be celebrated. But then greed means like, oh, but I wanted you to automate 95%. Can you reach there? Probably yes, but probably it requires some agreements rather than technology there. So like make sure that it is clearly defined how you define the success and also like how you are going to redefine the criteria if the criteria, the expectations are unrealistic. This is a process. This is just a discussion, nothing more. The other thing is I'm giving you the innovation manager title. Now you need to solve this for everybody in the company. All the project managers, all the linguists are going to continue doing the same things, the same old ways. And then you are there, and if there is no boss standing behind you, you're not going to be able to break the routines of the other people because you are their equal. You are not their boss. People take recommendations and also directions from their bosses very differently than from their peers. So make sure that if you have somebody in the company doing this, because it's perfectly okay. The boss is not always the right person to do this. I've seen some that are good for that, and I've seen some that they should definitely offer it to others, but stand behind the people doing the experimentation. And the other thing is request feedback, because one of the things that we see, and this is something that makes a lot of automation efforts fail, is that project managers have this on-time delivery, 100% delivery above everything mindset, which is great. That makes a great project manager. But the thing is that very often they fix something without telling that the problem exists. And if you are not the person that is seeing this problem, if there is no feedback coming back, then you will have to fix that times and again and again and again, and the automation will never work. If you take the time to communicate back, which is not an urgent thing, and you take the time to note what needs to be done, for example, by grabbing a video, then you are helping your colleague who is responsible for the automation. And maybe you need to have a further refinement of the process because you just don't know that this problem exists. This is something that we see a lot. So the automation fears relate to the loss of control, which is like, I don't know how to manually solve something if the automation fails. This is happening a lot. I don't know when it's going to fail and when it's going to work. And I can do better than this. The third one is actually always a matter of not having very explicit rules. The second issue is the lack of understanding. We're going to automate from now on. You need to explain in very plain terms how this is changing the work of everybody, because otherwise people will be against it because they are afraid that they are going to be replaced. The third thing is losing momentum, which is like we see that a lot with delays, that there was like an initial momentum, and then all of a sudden the project is over and there are issues with it, and people just still fix the issues as if it was like a normal translation project with problems. This needs to be ongoing. There needs to be attention, not as much as in the beginning, but a little bit. And another thing that people hate is one more system to monitor because they have dashboards and they need to compare the dashboards and there is no Excel, easy export and so on and so forth. And then it may be that a lot of projects take less time, but some of those that are actually not taking you not automated, or there is an issue, they take much longer to troubleshoot. This is where feedback is super important. So, how do we start with cheap automation? Uh, Input, output, clear transformation, if this, then that. If you can say something about this, this is where you start. Uh, you don't have to start with full automation, which is like replacing the project manager in simple projects or replacing the linguist. You can have partial automation. I'll try something I put in, and some productivity tool is going to be there. Uh, and you probably already have technology that has automation toolkit readily available. So what can be automated? I mean, these are the typical things that you can think about. Project flow circuit is basically the project management, how it comes from the customer, what steps it is going through, how is it delivered. The next one is modality circuit, which is like, is it human translation? Is it machine translation? Is it LLM? When is it applied if it's LLM? The quality circuit. Uh, how do we ensure the quality? How do we measure the quality? The sales circuit. CRM versus business management system. The salespeople should work in one system and the project managers in another system. Finances, very often, what comes out of business management systems is not really ideal because it doesn't get into your invoicing tool. That, for example, in Portugal, there is like, I don't think in Brazil, there is like very strict invoicing, but Portugal is one of the countries that are famous for the most tricky electronic invoicing requirements. The reporting circuit is like, how do I make sure that I see the data that I need? And what I need is at the end of the whole story. Vendor circuit, which is like the vendor onboarding, the vendor evaluation, the vendor management, lots of things. Query circuit, which is like feedback, query management, simplicity here. These all can be automated in translation, and these are all different things. So what do we recommend here at Be Lazy? If you want to experiment with automations, you probably have technology in your toolkit that already helps. I don't know how many of you are working with any of these. Please put things into the chat if you recognize, like I always recommend the MemoQ project template, automated actions. It's in the MemoQ TMS, so the server-based system, super useful. Trado Studio has a lot of App Store apps. If you are working with tools like XTR for Plunet, they do a lot of automations. Plunet is a bit complicated here. XTR is simpler, but on the other hand, it's like both of them have an awful lot of automations, and both of them can actually do projects without any interaction from the project manager. You might use Phrase. In that case, you may have a submitter portal as well. Thank you. So get to know which tools have simple and free and comprehensive and all independent REST APIs. So why am I saying this? Because people talk about APIs. Now, if you look at some of the most common tools in the industry, they have the most complicated APIs, and this is why it's hard to integrate with them. And actually, if you look also at, for example, XTM or even MemoQ or Plunet, they charge for the APIs. So like you can only really justify it if you got the volume going through that system. Comprehensive is that there are some systems that provide APIs, but you cannot do everything that you can do on the user interface. That's not a good API. And there are other ways of automating those. This is, for example, what we do at Be Lazy. And finally, role independent. Some of the tools out there only allow you to automate through the APIs in an administrator role. For example, MemoQ is like this. Imagine if your customer is using MemoQ, they will not give you admin access because then you would see all of their projects, not just what are assigned to you. So then you need to use a different type of a solution. I listed here those that I find to have like reasonably good APIs on our industry. And obviously, Be Lazy also comes here, but maybe a little bit later about that. So here, wait a second, like why do I speak about cloud-based translation management systems and business management systems? It's because the thing is that these are the ones that are easier to automate. So the local copies like a MemoQ WordFast, Trados Studio, local version, desktop version, quite hard to automate. Studio has some very good capabilities though. Then you need to understand the complexity of the project and language management in order to know how to really integrate and automate these tools. And finally, the question is, does AI solve my problem? AI is able to do many things, but the point is that without having somebody who understands those solutions and can double check those solutions, we've got a hard time. Um, so, what else can you do? Uh, you can also play around with some low budget orchestrators. I don't know if you know make.com. We use that a lot. It has crowding apps, Trados Enterprise apps, Be Lazy apps. So basically, you are just able to access the APIs in a way that you can visually just design capabilities. The other tool that is also very good with, for example, LLM orchestrations is n8n.io. And some of you may be familiar with Microsoft Power Automate, which is like one part is an orchestrator, which is the same thing as Make or n8n. And there is also like a robotic process automation. Robotic process automation is working with desktop tools. So you can use robotic process automation for example, for Trados Studio or MemoQ as well. And if you have some development experience, there are some amazing tools out there. These are AI based. Versori is actually an integration platform that designs integrations. And the other one is Lovable, lovable.dev, which is like creating database applications, portals like this, only based on prompting. Now, the point is that getting AI-based solutions from good to great is the hardest part. They have very quick solutions, but what I'm finding is that after that, very often a developer needs to understand really what the software does and find out where the shortcomings, where the bottlenecks are. This is unfortunately a little bit complicated. And then what we do at Be Lazy is that we actually focused on the hardest problems. So I will have a slide about it, and I will explain what we do. And then these are some concepts if you want to go with automation. APIs mean application programming interfaces. It's nothing else but an alternative to the user interface. On the user interface, I click here and I write this and so on and so forth. That's what the API does in an automated way. There are different types of APIs, REST, SOAP, Graph APIs, and also some others. The most typical ones these days are the REST APIs because they are the simplest to understand. They are atomic type of operations, like, for example, create a TM, then import something into the TM, then change the status of a segment. That's an atomic operation. What is a webhook? A webhook is something that the software sends you. You know, what can I do? For example, I want to know when somebody delivers a project in one system. I mean, one thing I can do is like check every hour, like, have you done it? Have you done it? Have you done it? Have you done it? That's a lot of like communication with the systems because probably you don't want to check every hour. You want to check it every minute. What a webhook does is that, don't worry, I will notify you when I have done it, when the project is done. And it just sends an information to the other system so the other system knows when to respond. So when to call the APIs, for example, export a document. These are things that go together. APIs and webhooks, very important things. Authentication is how you are able to access the tool through the APIs or through something else. You can use the username password like you use it on the user interface. You can have two-factor authentication as well. Sometimes you need an API key, which sometimes you are able to generate from the tool, but in other times, it is not you generating it, but your customer. Will your customer generate that for you? Not sure. And this is when alternative solutions to APIs also come in. And this is, for example, what bLazy uses a lot, HTTP traffic interception. So we have built, for example, our MemoQ integration on the basis of the MemoQ web. It doesn't need the APIs. Why is it? Because the APIs are only serving uh, admin rights. So you will most likely not get the APIs to your customer system. But you have a user interface. The user interface is communicating between your browser and their server. And if you are like monitoring the traffic, you're able to automate that system. What we are doing is that we are actually capturing a lot of this. It's not only through that, but also other systems like XTM. We are doing HTTP traffic interception with SmartLink as well, with some others as well. And the thing is that this is completely legal because interoperability is always a legal case. Um, and what you are doing there is like we are converting it into normal API calls. But it's not only the HTTP traffic, which is a pretty elegant thing to do, but also sometimes you need to go web scraping. Web scraping is when you are downloading an HTML from the web, and then you are parsing what's in it. And finally, the robotic process automation is a set of tools that allows you to also control local systems. And then comes, where is AI? I haven't talked much about AI, right? In AI, the main concepts relate to embedding. Embedding is, for example, the way how you are converting a large data set into something indexable. So the embedding is the thing that allows you to retrieve what is relevant for you. For example, you can use a word-based embedding for indexing knowledge. This is like words2vec is actually the name of the embedding. There are different types of these, but this is the name of the embedding that was used for the large language models initially. Then you've got the retrieval augmented generation. So I've got my translation memory. I want to push into the generation what is coming from my translation memory so that the system is able to take that into account. Now, what do? First, I actually run on the translation memories the embeddings. So I index them according to the retrieval augmented generation. And then I enrich the prompt only with the relevant part. LangChain is a very interesting set of Python technologies that makes this like quite easy. And then finally, there is the MCP, which is allowing AI systems like Claude, like OpenAI and others, so the textual interface, to use external APIs to query, for example, the status of your project in, I don't know, in Phrase or in bLazy. So how do you budget for all of this? First of all, automation costs money, and take that into account. If a 100 million USD company spends 2 million on their platform a year, then a 1 million revenue USD company could spend 20,000 on their improvements. This is just mathematics. There is some money involved here, so there is budgeting necessary. Deployment is taking some time, and the first thing you need to do is you need to understand that probably with people, you are not understanding everything in full detail because they solve that. People use shortcuts, which is great. But on the other hand, it is something that will cause you some unexpected events. Make innovation and automation transparent. It is like make it clear that you are measuring how much time was spent. What were your original goals? What did you learn? Because nothing is going to work exactly the way you imagine it, but it's going to work. And where could we use the knowledge? And if you have the budget for that, train someone in Python and give them some simple tasks. Usually there are people who are ready to do this. And why I'm saying Python is that in our industry with language, Python is a very, very powerful platform. So if you don't want to have like a full development team, then for the scripting, for simple things, Python is the best. This is a safe investment. So how much time until you reach a simple automation? Because I think for a lot of you, this comes up like, in one day, you can already get somewhere. For example, in make.com, you can do things in a couple of hours. Um, if you are hiring a developer for something, for a local tool, nothing is less than a day. So don't even consider that even the smallest thing can be done in less than a day. Because there is error handling, there is troubleshooting, all of these things. So don't budget for anything less than a day. Usually it's a week or two. If you want a fully automated cloud deployed tool, that is like a few days to 2 weeks. And just understand that if you got something that can be done in 1 week, another thing that can be done in 1 week, and you want to merge these two together, that's probably going to take 3 weeks, not two, because complexity increases with the internal connections all the time. And last bit is that don't develop everything yourself. Build a technology stack. This is something that we have webinars about, and you are very welcome to join. So maybe now a couple of thoughts about Be Lazy, just to conclude this webinar. What is it? It's a project centralization system. So what we are trying to do is basically have different types of project sources coming into one system that is able to communicate with different other systems and establish a single pipeline. So you can have projects coming in from vendor portals, translation management systems, customer portals, email, all of these things, forms, Jira tickets. All of these things are the sources of your projects. But in reality, once you put that into a translation management system, you've got an analysis, you've got a way to process that. And then what do you want to do? Establish a single pipeline. It doesn't matter if it's coming through your customer's XTM or SmartLink or coming in I don't know, phrase. What you would like to do is run the same prompts in the LLM. This is what we are trying to do, create a simple single pipeline for you. Many of our customers are using Belazy because they work for other translation providers or for companies that use translation management systems and give them jobs in XTM or Phrase or SmartLink or Global Link or others. But you can also use Belazy to create projects in Protemos, Plunet, or XTRF from emails. You can also use it to connect HubSpot with Plunet or XTRF. So there are many ways of using it. And if you're not using Plunet, Protemos, or XTRF, you can still use your own system, or you can work with, for example, Google Sheets as a project management system. And then with APIs, you're actually able to do other things, such as like exporting, importing XLIF, which means that you can include AI at any point in time. Create projects from template emails, store files in SharePoint or Google Drive automatically when you are downloading it from your customer systems and so on and so forth. Or you can also have connections to customer content management systems and perform a full round trip without human intervention. We are teaming up very often with others such as iLangel or Crowdin. They have a lot of different connectors to the customer systems, and we are able to connect that into the Plunets and Protemoses and other systems as well. And then finally, what we always hear is that my client is complicated. Now, in reality, everybody's clients are complicated. The Be Lazy clients are also complicated. And what the clients think is that my vendors are complicated. So it's a very common concern. And what is the solution to this? Is that you should manage relationships rather than projects. So when you're thinking about automation, it's like you don't do automation for a single project. You do it for a recurring project or a recurring process. So what you need to do is make sure that you are giving feedback to your clients, because very often what happens is that they don't want to complicate your life. They just don't know that they are complicating your life. Explain to them why consistency is important. And if you think that the client is complicated, then you can expect that it will take longer to return on investment, and you will need to do a lot of exception handling. But in reality, I would say that as long as the clients are not completely crazy in terms of like they should be in a separate place rather than a company, you are able to automate uh, whatever flow you need. So what I suggest to you, automation is something which is very possible, but it takes time because you need to uncover a lot of the hidden information in the company. But technically, automation is always possible. What's a question sometimes is whether financially automation makes sense, because very complex automation is possible, but it may be too expensive, more expensive than solving the problems with a human. So, so if you're interested, please reach out. My email address is below, so it is my first name dot surname at belazy.cat. And I would like to look at the questions now because so far I have not, and would be happy to take some other questions as well.
Uh, Great. Thank you. Thank you very much, Stefan. There is one question though from Juliana. Juliana, do you want to speak up or can he just answer it? Let me see if I.
I think that, okay, I think that Juliana, you're using
Okay.
LSP Expert and Trados, you mentioned that. Uh, and I mean, we can connect HubSpot with other PMSs. So we've got like Plunet and XTR have included currently. It is possible to connect it to others, but we don't have an LSP Expert connection.
One of the things that I wanted to ask you, and I'm quite sure you already answered, but any it was like we as like for example my company, we are a small company and we receive projects from all different sources from uh, the large multilingual LSPs through direct clients that send through their own systems that are not related to translation and through emails. Can we create one simple pipeline through these totally different ways of input from projects?
Yeah, that's why we are talking about the project centralization. So there are systems that, for example, belazy supports out of the box. There may be systems that don't, that are not supported yet out of the box here. What we are looking at is how to cover more and more of these
Okay.
systems and make sure that there is a simple way of grabbing these. And if you are using a tool like for example, Protomos, then you are able to put that automatically into that tool and manage it there. And we take care of, for example, delivery. So taking it, accepting it, reassigning it, delivering it, and also monitoring the delivery in that. So these are the main points that we are looking at. And with certain systems, it is possible. With other systems, there is only delivery and nothing else. So like depending on
Depending
what
on the
the
system.
source system allows, there are like different levels of capabilities.
And about and regarding the quality from the vendors, this is something that we are discussing in the company and regarding to automate the evaluation of our vendors. Do you also assist in something like that?
I mean, that's an interesting thing, like how you are doing that. One of the things that comes up these days, at least with us all the time, is whether QA is dead or not. So the thing is that vendors can be automated, vendors can be evaluated automatically or manually. How you are building a database of the evaluations, what aspects of evaluations matter? That's always a very specific question. So what we can do, for example, is that we can run, let's say, an XLEAF from your projects that go through a TMS. We can send that to a large language model and come back with certain values. that you can then store in a database. That is more or less automated vendor evaluation. The question is whether you trust it or not. The question is, how do you improve it? So yeah, there are ways of doing this. I mean, for example, the machine translation quality estimation can be used the exact same way to human evaluations as well. And then there are other aspects of the evaluation, like on-time delivery, for example. This is something that we monitor, and we also monitor, things like the linguists, like how many words have been assigned to them, what is the minimum amount of words that they need to take from you every day in order to deliver all the jobs on time, which is changing with every assignment, things like these. And yes, the on-time delivery is there always monitored, and it's irrefutable as well. And these aspects all together define like how you want to evaluate the vendor. And I think it's again like coming into the vendor selection the same way. You need to have a process that you decide that this is going to be your process, and then automations are possible.
Thank you. Is there any more questions? Let me see. There is. No, it's okay. Okay. If anyone has any questions, anything they want, just reach out to Svan. Okay. We will provide this video later next week. But if any questions, anything you want, just reach out to Svan. Svan, if you can put your email in the chat, maybe
Yeah, of course.
it's better for them to. But of
Yeah.
course, we can share that later also.
Here
But
you are.
great. Thank you very much, Svan. Thank you so much for
You're welcome.
accepting our
Thank you,
invitation.
everyone.
It was really nice, and this is one of the topics that our members were really interested about, and I'm sure they are really happy. And
Thank you so much. If anytime you want to have, for example, a discussion and you would like to pick my brain, happy to do that. Uh, Automation is either a very generic topic or a very detailed topic, so there is no in between. This is like something that makes it hard sometimes to talk about it.
yeah. Well, thank you very much. So, guys, this is how we end this webinar. Thank you very much for everyone. Thank you again, Svan. See you soon, and keep an eye in our social media that there's more news coming in. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye bye.
Thank you. Have a great day. Thank you very much for joining.